FNAF has planted itself in the horror genre, and today I thought I would draw Springtrap not in four different styles, but as four different horror villains. The four villains I have in mind are Frankenstein, Ghostface, Freddy, and Realistic. I cannot wait for the second movie, and I cannot wait for this reimagining of Springtrap because I think you're going to love it as we start off with Frankenstein. Now, for each one of these sections, it's basically going to look like what would Springtrap look like as an animatronic through Frankenstein, through Ghostface, and through Freddy Krueger. It's almost going to not just be a palette change, but a fundamental change of how I design the characters. So as you're going to see, I add a nice little bridge to his eyebrow region because Frankenstein's monster has a big forehead. It's just part of one of the characteristics of that, character. But the one thing to take into note is that it also has a very metallic look at the top of his head because he is made of parts that are machined together, sewn together, etc. And for a little bit of a lore on the history, you will, of Frankenstein's monster, he is just that. He's Frankenstein's monster. We often call him Frankenstein, but that's actually the name of Victor Frankenstein, the creator of the monster. In fact, in the original movie, it just says the monster. In the book, however, Frankenstein's monster does have a name, and Victor Frankenstein calls him Adam, which is kind of a unique twist because Adam was the first man in Judeo-Christian philosophy, and Victor Frankenstein's creature is Adam. So I do kind of like that little homage, if you will. And of course, in the original, he is played by my favorite horror actor, probably of all time, Boris Karloff. He just has such an amazing presence about him. Whenever you see him in any of the classic black and white horror movies, he just fills a screen with emoting very little but getting so much out of a character. Now let's head on over to Ghostface.
What's your favorite scary movie?
When I was researching this particular, style effect and movie, one of the things that I didn't actually know was that I often mistook, as many other people did, the Ghostface mask to be inspired by Edvard Munch's The Scream or The Cry, depending upon your interpretation, that painting, when in fact it actually had nothing to do with it. It was basically off of 1930s black and white cartoons, and specifically Betty Boop cartoons, which is actually kind of unique, and it's that little unique twist where something sweet and innocent can be actually quite terrifying, and that actually think it makes it scarier. That faceless shell of a mask makes it a heck of a lot more terrifying when you actually think about it. So to achieve this effect, I basically widened out the jaw. That was pretty much a must, but also I wanted it to still look like an animatronic. And I didn't want it just to be like a regular jump scare effect. So I had to really slope the jaw downward. But I also had to change the shoulder. The shoulders weren't going to be as high up. They were going to be more slouched down as more of a relaxed figure. And in the end, the total piece I think comes out about the way I would like it. I probably should add more blacks, but I feel like if it was just purely black and white, then all I'm doing is a color swap. I wanted it to still feel like Springtrap. With Ghostface done, it's time to move on to the world of Freddy Krueger. I dare say that intro scene still holds up today. Robert Englund was actually an amazing Broadway classically trained actor. Most people actually don't realize that. They think of him as like the campy Freddy horror, because he's really become a horror icon and a horror legend, but he actually is a very well-versed, well-trained actor who just found his way into this iconic role and just, rolled with it, for no pun intended. To keep up with the Freddy look and the Freddy aesthetic, there was one thing that I had to absolutely do, and that is keep the burnt look about him. And the best way to achieve this was to basically use a lot of burnt trap as my inspiration for Freddy Krueger, because if you don't know, Freddy Krueger was burned, and that is how he has his really creepy aesthetic look. So once again, to keep this really creepy aesthetic look, we're going to use burnt trap as the means by which to kind of make it look like a Freddy animatronic. For the coloring on this, I wanted to keep everything nice and loose and flowy, and this had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that my markers absolutely died about halfway through and I was just squirming to get through this particular part.
Bullshit?
Couldn't have said it any better myself, but we're going to actually use this to our advantage. Because of the dying markers, we get to have these really faint layers that we can then layer over the top with different sets of colors to kind of give it a Freddy and a little bit of Springtrap and Burnt Trap all rolled into one, and you still get that animatronic feel, especially when we punch in the blacks here. That's when it really feels like it's an animatronic. From the world of Freddy Krueger, we're now moving on to realistic. Now, one of the biggest questions in my community is how to do realism. How do I achieve realism the way that not only I do, but how anyone can on a really high level, realistic level? And for that, I always say I'm not necessarily the best teacher. I'm really good at inspiring you to create art, but not the best at teaching art. And I understand that, and I've kind of learned to accept that. But if you do want to get better, this channel right here, Colin Dyer, he does amazing art tutorials, and he also does incredibly simplified breakdowns of how to do things from eyes, nose, teeth, body, posture, hair, I mean everything. He breaks it down to a very simple, succinct way in about 5 minutes. I'm going to link both his YouTube and his TikTok. He even gives little notes throughout that will help any artist basically achieve that next level of art. So if you're a beginner, it's going to help you get a lot better at all the basics that you'll need. If you're an intermediate artist, it's going to help you get to that high level of professional art. And if you're a professional artist, well, it's a good refresher, because a lot of times I'll love rewatching his stuff because it helps me kind of refresh of all the things I should be thinking about while I'm creating art that sometimes I just take for granted. You see, like as you're seeing all this realism take place, there's lots of little steps that if you don't take for granted, it can really get bogged down flat and it can really end up just not looking the way you want it to. So it's the biggest key that when you're doing any type of realism is to take the time to enjoy all the little details, but work the image as a whole. As you can see, I'm not just working through one little area, completely rendering it out. So that's my little tip, is try to work the whole image at once. And as we wind down on this end of the video, I do want to know, who is your favorite FNAF character? Who's your favorite horror movie villain? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. If you love this video and you want to see more of this content, please do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments which of these 4 sides is your favorite. And as always, I'll see you all in the next video.